Alright guys, so who is this guy? Does anybody know who this is? Yes, George Washington. Does anybody know why George Washington is doing that funky pose? No, he is not petting his horse. No, he is not about to go golfing. What if I told you there was a Bible underneath his hand? Yes, exactly. He is getting sworn in. He is getting inaugurated. So, does anybody know why there's a statue of George Washington being inaugurated on this site in New York City? I didn't think so. George Washington was not inaugurated in Washington, D.C. He was inaugurated in New York City in 1789. So I think this is really kind of fascinating. It's like most people associate the history of America with Washington, D.C., but all of that great history started right here in New York City. So this building right here has been here since 1700, and this was New York City City Hall. Now, when we claimed our independence as a country, this became the capital of the United States. So this became known as Federal Hall, basically. So George Washington did get sworn in here, and we'll talk about where he went afterwards a little later on in the tour. But the capital of New York City the capital of the United States only stayed in New York City for 1 year. The Southerners protested that by having the capital so far north in New York City, that there would be a bias within the government. It would be less agriculturally based and more business based. And so that is why our capital moved south to Philadelphia and then moved south again to Washington, D.C. So New York City was, yes, the capital of the United States for 1 year until people complained about it. Basically, is what happened. Power of the people and all that stuff. So after it moved to Philadelphia, this retained its prior function. It became City Hall again until a new City Hall was built a little further up Broadway in 1812. And then, guess what we did to this building, guys? Oh, we tore it down for $400 worth of scrap material used to fight the British in the War of 1812. So, America's history, scrap material in an instant. It's an amazing story, right? So, unfortunately, this is not the original building, but it's a good representation of it. After this was used as a City Hall and City Hall moved a little further upwards, this was used as a customs house for a little while. Then it was used as a sub-treasury until we actually built a sub-treasury. And then it became a national memorial, basically. I should mention, if you can connect the dots, some people can and some people can't. But if this was the first capital of the United States, who do you guys think were the first group to congregate here? You got it. Congress. So if Congress gathered here for the first time, what essential bill was passed here? Exactly, the Bill of Rights. So like I said, all of the history, Bill of Rights, Congress, happening right here on the steps of New York City. On Wall Street, who knew, right? All right, so I'm gonna have you guys turn around and, not you, but you know, my imaginary tour, not my imaginary tour, turn around, take a look at this building right here. Does anybody know what this building is? No? Well, why not? There's no signage on it whatsoever. You are correct. This building is the J.P. Morgan Bank. It was built in 1913. Now, J.P. Morgan was a huge financier and philanthropist in not just New York City, but in America. He was so heavily involved with corporate finance and with industries across America. He was often accused of actually manhandling the country's finances. So J.P. Morgan put his bank here in 1913. In 1913, we could build buildings a lot taller than this is today. But he decided he would settle on 4 stories. 2 reasons. Number one, he thought, hey, I don't need to rent out other floors to other companies. I'm strong enough, I'm wealthy enough, and gosh darn it, I'm good enough, right? But it's strong enough that if he wanted to add a 40-story tower, later on he could do so. Along the same vein, he did not need to put his name on the exterior of the building, basically saying, hey, if you don't know who I am and where my business is located, then I don't want to do business with you, so there. So this is the J.P. Morgan Bank. Just so you know, J.P. Morgan merged with Chase in 2000. They are now considered to be the biggest bank in the United States today based on their assets, and the 3rd biggest bank based on their number of retail chains. That all started right down here. So in 2003, well, let me start back. In 1980s, they moved further down Wall Street, turned this into a corporate training facility. And in 2003, it was sold for $100 million for luxury condos. And then in 2007, they sold it to the China International Fund, which is a company that helps reconstruction projects in 3rd world countries. So whether you find symbolism in that story, as I do, I think it kind of makes a lot of sense. In any case, that's the JP Morgan Bank. Right next to JP Morgan Bank, you'd probably recognize this building. So even though Wall Street has become synonymous with the New York Stock Exchange, its address is actually located on this street right here, which is called Broad Street. So the Stock Exchange, first of all, wasn't formally the Stock Exchange until 1817. But they didn't even move into this building until 1903. A man named George C. Post actually won a architectural design contest, and he beat out 7 other architects to put the new Stock Exchange in this building. Let's rewind a little bit in time. So the New York Stock Exchange was based on an agreement made in 1792 all the way down this way. On the water there was a lovely tree. It was a buttonwood tree, and supposedly 17 New York merchants gathered under said buttonwood tree and decided to buy stock in each other's companies to help keep each other afloat. That is what makes up what we consider the stock exchange today. $5.5 trillion is traded here annually. You can actually look at the stocks coming in through those, pause for loud New Yorkers.
He ain't the only one with a switch going.
So you can actually watch the stocks come in on what we call a zipper, right under this gold archway. At 5 o'clock on the nose, that will be shut off. They're actually closed on the weekends as well. So you used to be able to go into the floor and see people trading and yelling, buy, sell, buy, sell, buy, sell. But it's been closed after 9/11. So one last thing I want to talk to you guys about, and it's actually, I don't even know if you can see it from this angle, but it's behind me. If you crane your neck upwards, you're going to see a copper spire stuck on the top of this building over here. Now, this building's address is 40 Wall Street. We usually just call it 40 Wall Street. In 1995, it was actually bought by who? Oh, you didn't know? Donald Trump, of course, who likes to rename things after himself, so it's known as the Trump Building, which you can see why we like to call it 40 Wall Street instead. So in any case, 40 Wall Street is a significant part of what we call the skyscraper wars of New York City. So around the late 1920s, obviously before the stock market crashed, we had this period in New York where everyone wanted to have the tallest building in New York. Obviously, to have the tallest building in New York meant you were the most strong, you had the most virility, you were the company to take over the world. And we got a little bit ahead of ourselves, let's just say that. So in 1928, the 2 buildings that were at war to build the highest skyscraper in New York City were 40 Wall Street and the Chrysler Building. Now the architect of 40 Wall Street, Craig Severance, and the architect of the Chrysler Building, Walter Chrysler, were so infamously rivals of each other that the story goes as far to say that they sent spies to each other's building. Some say they even sent them dressed as janitors to find out, hey, do you know, how tall is this building going to be? Oh, you don't say, writing down the information in secret. Who really knows what lengths they went to? But finally, Walter Chrysler has had enough. He announces to the newspapers, I'm done with this game. I'm building my building to 925 feet, and that is that. Well, Craig Severance says, well, that's not so hard to beat. I'm just going to add 2 feet to the top of my building, and I will be the tallest in New York City. So that's exactly as it goes. Walter Chrysler finishes his building at 925 feet. Craig Severance finishes his building at 927 feet. He wins the game. Not so much. 2 months later, Walter Chrysler pulls out a spire that has been secretly building in an elevator shaft. That famous spire that sits on top of the Chrysler Building serves absolutely no function whatsoever other than to make his building taller than 40 Wall Street. So it tops off the Chrysler Building. They are the tallest in New York City at 1,050 feet for 1 year until the Empire State Building was built. And so that was the end of that story. Not to mention, on the day that Walter Chrysler finally put the spire on top of his building, the stock markets crashed. So that was the end of the skyscraper wars.